Hello class, nice to meet you once again. Welcome to Hello There's a lecture series. I'll be taking you through a quick tour on the 304 principles of auditing. This video is for study session 3, supplementary provisions related to auditors responsibilities, and the concept of true and fair field. Do enjoy your learning as you go through this video. Introduction. Most audits that are of any significance and in respect of limited liability companies. The legal framework related to audits of companies is contained in the Companies and Allied Matter Act, 2004. The members of any professional or the members of any professions owe duties to the public, to those who retain or employ them, to the profession itself, and to their fellow members. These duties may at times be contrary to a member's personal self-interest. Any member who acts contrary to the code of ethics will be guilty of professional misconduct. After you might have studied this session, you should be able to explain the supplement provision related to auditors, and you should be able to examine the concepts of resignation of auditors, and you're able to discuss the auditor's responsibility, and lastly, to be able to examine the concept of true and fair field. Supplementary provisions relating to auditors. Most audits that are of any significance and in respect of limited liability companies that have been explained above. The legal framework related to the audit of companies is contained in the Company and Allied Matter Act, 2004, as follows. A special notice shall be required for a resolution at annual general meeting of a company. Appointing as auditor a person other than a retiring auditor. Reappointing as auditor a retiring auditor who was appointed by director to fill a casual vacancy, and removing an auditor before the expiration of his term of office. On receipt of such notice as intended resolution, the company shall forthwith send a copy of it to the person proposed to be appointed or removed, as the case may be, to the retiring auditors, and where the casual vacancy was caused by the resignation of an auditor who resigned. Where notice is given of such a resolution, the retiring auditor, as the case may be, the auditor proposed to be removed, makes with respect to the intended resolution representations in writing to the company not exceeding a reasonable length, and requires their notification to members of the company, and the company shall, unless the representations are received by it too late for it to do so, in any notice of the resolution given to members of the company, state the fact of the representation have been made. Send a copy of the representation to every member of the company to whom notice of the meeting is or has been made. If a copy of any such representation is not sent out as required because they were received too late or because of the company's default, the auditor may, without prejudice to his rights to be heard orally, require that the representation shall be read out at the meeting. And copies of the representation need not be sent out, and the representative need not be read out at the meeting if, on the application either of the company or of any other person claiming to be aggrieved, the court is satisfied that the right conferred are being abused to secure needless publicity for defamatory matter, and the court may order the company cost on the applications to be paid in whole or in part by the auditor, notwithstanding that he is not a party to the application. Section 364 of CAMA. Having through with this, next to resignation of auditor. Certain provisions introduced in the CAMA 2004 are designed to ensure that the auditors do not just resign without any explanation of their action. If an auditor wishes to resign partway through his term of office, the law provides in relation to auditors as follows. An auditor of a company may resign his office by depositing a notice in writing to that effect at the company registered office, and any such notice shall appraise to bring his term of office to an end on the date of which the notice is deposited, on such later dates as may be specified in it. An auditor's notice of resignation shall not be effective unless it contains either a statement to the effect that there are no circumstances connected with his resignation which he considers should be brought to the notice of the members or creditors of the company. A statement of any such circumstance as are mentioned above, where a notice under this section is deposited at the company registered office, the company shall within 14 days send a copy of notice to the Corporate Affairs Commission, and if the notice contains a statement to every person who is entitled to be sent copies of the financial statement to, the company or any person claiming to be aggrieved may within 14 days of the receipt by the company of a notice containing a statement apply to the court for an order. The company shall within 14 days of the court decision send to the person mentioned, if the court makes an order, a statement setting out the effect of the order, and if not, a copy of the notice containing the statement. If default is made in compliance with certain provisions, the company and every officer of it who is in default shall be guilty of an offence and liable to a daily default fine of 100 naira. Then what exactly is auditor's requirement? The difference is just a matter of degree. Hence, the auditor's responsibilities as regards the objectives and general principle governing statutory audit of financial statement prevail. Auditor should obtain engagement letter. Auditor should obtain knowledge about the entity in sufficient quantity. He should consider the law and regulation governing the entity. These are laws and regulations which relate directly to the preparation of financial statement. These are also the laws and regulations which provide a framework for the conduct of the business. Other laws and regulations. The auditor should obtain the going concern basis in financial statement. Review such subsequent events. Auditor should review subsequent events. Auditor should consider other information contained in the financial statement. You should also ensure proper quality control of the audit work. And lastly, you should obtain representation by management as part of audit evidence. Composition of audit committee. The audit committee is a body established under section 359 of the Company and Allied Matters Act 2004, to which the auditor of a company will report in addition to the auditor's duty to report to the members of the company in accordance with section 359 subsection 1 of the Act. The audit committee shall consist of equal number of directors and representatives of the shareholders of the public with a maximum number of 6 members. Objectives and function of audit committee. Any member of a company may nominate a shareholder as a member of audit committee if a notice is given to the company secretary at least 21 days before the annual general meeting. The members of audit committee are not entitled to remuneration. According to section 359 subsection 4 of the CAMA 2004, the audit committee shall examine the auditor's report and make recommendation thereon on the annual general meeting. Section 359 subsection C states that the subject to such other additional functions and powers that the company article of association may stipulate, the objectives and function of the committee shall be able to ascertain whether the accounting and reporting policy of the company comply with legal requirements and agreed ethical practices. Review the scope and planning of the audit requirements. Review the findings on management letters in conjunction with external auditor and departmental responses thereon. Keep under review the effectiveness of company system of accounting and internal control. Make recommendation to the board in regards to the appointment, removal, and remuneration of the external auditors of the company. Authorize the internal audit to carry out investigation into any activities of the company which may be of interest or concern to the committee. Statement of Auditing Standard 61 Communication with the audit committee requires the auditor to determine that certain matter related to the conduct of an audit and are communicated to those who oversee the financial reporting process generally, that is, an audit committee or other formally designated group. True and fair view. The concept of true and fair view occupies a central place in financial reporting. The concept, which has been debated over time, has a powerful direct effect on accounting practice, and it is the ultimate test for financial statement. The Company and Like Matter Act requires the auditors to include in their report whether the financial statement show a true and fair view of the affairs of the entity at a balance sheet date. The auditing standard also put the concept of true and fair view in perspective. The true and fair view is a dynamic concept in that over time, the concept has always moved in sympathy with changes in accounting and business practice. The more the law changes and the more accounting and auditing standard changes, the more the requirement which the auditor must meet to ensure the financial statement upon which he or she is reporting meet the concept of true and fair view. The concept affects the interpretation of the component of financial reporting and comes to play in setting procedure for the conduct of the audit in an accounting practice. It's important to note that financial statement will not give a true and fair view unless the information they contain is sufficient in quantity and quality to satisfy the reasonable expectation of the readers to whom they are addressed. In most countries, directors have a statutory duty to produce financial statements which give a true and fair view, and the auditors are required by laws to report whether, in their opinion, the financial statement give a true and fair view. However, there is no official definition in the International Auditing and Assurance Standard Board (IASB) glossary of terms or in any individual international standard on auditing (ISA) of the meaning of true and fair view. The auditor reports on whether or not the financial statement gave true and fair view of the position of the entity as at the end of the financial period and the performance of the entity during the period. The auditor does not certify or guarantee that the financial statements are correct. Although the phrase true and fair view has no legal definition, the term true implies free from error, and fair implies that there is no undue bias in the financial statements or the way in which they have been presented. In preparing the financial statement, a large amount of judgment is exercised by the director. Similarly, judgment is exercised by the auditor in reaching its opinion. The phrase true and fair view indicates that a judgment is being given that the financial statement can be relied upon and have been properly prepared in accordance with an appropriate financial reporting framework. Materiality concept. The Auditing Practice Board APB Statement of Auditing Standard 220 covers materiality and the audit. The International Auditing and Assurance Standard Board of IVAC issued International Statement on Auditing 320 on audit materiality. The International Statement on Auditing on audit materiality states that information is considered to be material to the financial statement if misstatement or omission of such information may reasonably be expected to influence the economic decision of users of those financial statements, including their assessment of management stewardship. Auditor must consider the effect of possible misstatement of relatively small amount, in that a relatively small error in a month-end procedure may be an indication of possible material misstatement when the cumulative effect of the financial statement is considered at the end of the financial period. A misstatement or aggregate of all misstatements in the financial statement is material if, considering the surrounding circumstances, A, it is probable that the decision of a person who is relying on financial statement and who has a reasonable knowledge of business and economic activities will be changed or influenced by such misstatements or the aggregate of all misstatements. Steps in establishing materiality. The steps to be followed in establishing materiality of an audit item are: A. Set a threshold at the planning stage about materiality. B. Record misstatement identified in the course of the audit. And lastly, document the likely misstatement and compare with materiality. When immaterial information is given in the financial statement, the result may distort the understanding ability of the other information provided. In such circumstances, the auditors need to consider the exclusion of such immaterial information. However, the requirement of legislation, accounting standard, and auditing standard must be considered in determining the nature of information to be given in the financial statement. Principal factors affecting materiality. The auditors must exercise judgment in determining whether information is material. An item may be material considering its size and nature. The following are the principal factors which may affect materiality. A. The size of the item when taken in context of the financial statement as a whole and of the other information readily available in the marketplace to investors and users that will affect their evaluation of the financial statement. B. Consideration may be given to the nature of the item in relation to basis of the transaction or other event giving rise to it. 2. The significance of the event or transaction. 3. The legality, sensitivity, normality, and potential consequence of the item. And lastly, the disclosure requirement of such item. Consideration of materiality. In planning an audit work or in conducting an audit work, the auditor seeks to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement and give a true and fair view. Auditors exercise professional judgment in determining what material is. Both the amount in quantity and the nature of misstatement are considered in determining materiality. There exists a difficulty in ascribing general mathematical definition of materiality, in that it has both qualitative and quantitative aspects. Auditors must consider the possibility of misstatements of relatively small amount that cumulatively could have a material effect on the financial statement. For example, a relatively small error in a month-end procedure could be an indication of a potential material misstatement. If the error is repeated each month during the financial year that is being audited, auditors should also pay attention to the nature of misstatement relating to qualitative aspect of a matter. For example, a qualitative misstatement will be an inadequate or inaccurate description of an accounting policy when it is likely that the users of financial statement could be misled by the description. Materiality and audit work. In planning and conducting an audit work, auditors must consider A. Materiality and its relationship with audit risk, and B. Materiality when determining the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedure. At the planning stage, the assessment of materiality based on the latest available reliable financial information assists in determination of an efficient and effective audit approach. The preliminary materiality assessment helps the auditors decide such questions as what items to examine and decide such questions and whether to use sampling techniques. This enables auditors to select audit procedures in practice. The assessment of materiality at the audit planning stage may differ from that at the evaluating stage. This may be caused by a change in circumstances or a change necessitated by the outcome of the audit. For example, if the actual result of the operations and financial position are different from those that are expected when the audit was planned. Auditors must also consider the implication of factors which result in the revision of their preliminary materiality assessment on their audit approach. In this circumstance, the auditor may modify the nature, timing, and extent of planned audit procedures. For example, if after planning for specific audit procedures, auditors determine that the acceptable materiality level falls short of the initial materiality level, the risk of failing to detect a material misstatement necessarily increases. The risk may be compensated for by the auditors carrying out more audit work. Since we have come to the end of this study session, hope to see you next class for study session 4, where we'll be discussing items communicated by auditors, the relevant legislation on the performance of audit. Thank you for listening.